intermittent though.
Yeah, I'm already getting warnings on this side. See here.
Whoopsie, audio's missing. Oh, there it is. I heard myself.
Did you?
Oh, I can hear my typing.
Yeah, I'm already getting warnings on this side. Yeah, see on my screen, Fox, I have the Coffee with the Cops background.
So they, without a producer one, are still sorting things out. I'm here, I guess, for as eye candy.
Right.
They needed someone under the age of 65 here, so.
Oh my gosh, I know.
I
right?
can hear my typing.
Yeah, I'm already getting warnings on this side. Yeah, see on my screen, Fox, I have
so Chuck's just what a lovely start.
Do a pop out. I have the pop out Coffee with the Cops.
Go on, I'll scoot over for you. So there you go. They, without a producer one, are still sorting things out. I'm here.
Okay, this
I
is
guess
weird.
for as eye candy.
Right.
They needed someone under the age of 65 here.
When I wasn't a pop out window,
gosh, I know.
right?
I can hear my typing.
We had our picture. Yeah, see on my screen, Fox,
I think Fox is doing
just
what a lovely start.
Okay, pop out. I have the.
Is it ready?
Yep, we're good.
I'll
Let's start.
scoot over for you. If you guys have law enforcement questions, be ready and willing to ask. Oh, there it is. Oh, whoa.
Okay, this is
I guess
weird.
for as eye candy. There it is. Okay, we got it. Alfredo, with this little cat in the box. What up? I don't know if they can hear us or not, but
I don't know. So, okay, Fox, how is it that you are streaming when I haven't even started my stream on my side?
he can stream Discord. Maybe he's with the stream key. Yeah, because you're technically streaming to Discord.
Okay. Yeah, because I got nothing on my on my overlays or anything. So
Come on with it, Chris. Give him an intro.
cool. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining us on this episode of Coffee with the Cop. I'm here with my guest from Only Cops, Josh, and you guys had a great stream last time with Josh, so let's definitely have a rinse repeat of that. We're going to be answering your questions and whatever those questions may be, and we're going to talk about life on the beat, all those different things, and the good part about all of this, having Josh here, is that Josh has his First Amendment rights restored back to him.
Hey, well,
he'll be able
except for on YouTube.
Yeah, right. So Josh will be able to tell you what I am thinking. I'll tell you what, that's for sure. So I'm going to give it to Josh, and we'll go from there.
What's going on? I'm Josh from Only Cops. We are currently, I think, 3 days left on our hiatus. We got a PPWEC for, I'm sure, showing something incredibly disparaging on our channel. We go live twice a week when we're not banned from YouTube, and then we do some Let's Play stuff. That is me, for those of you that don't know. And I was a cop from 2017 to 2021 in Arlington, Texas, and left because I have marketable skills elsewhere and hated my job. So,
Right.
There's an interesting question I got asked. This was actually earlier this week, and they were talking about how long did it take you? How long do you feel like it took you to be able to do the job safely? And I was like, damn, like I really chewed on it for a second. And I was like, it took me almost it's like a year and a half on the street. That's on the street. That's after field training. That's after academy. That is in a patrol car by myself having to go do the job. And I really, truly felt that if I was doing something unsafe, I was doing it by choice as opposed to by ignorance or a lack of experience or whatever. But it was a weird question because the more I chewed on it, the more I thought about every single time we watch body cam breakdowns and stuff like that, and we see rookie officers not knowing a penal code offense or not knowing doing egregious safety mishaps where they're not frisking a person or they're not securing somebody in the back of a car. It was that's the first time truly I'd ever really tried to put like a number on it. And I was like, oh, damn, I didn't think, because it was literally a year and a half straight of every debrief after a serious call. I was like, wow, I fucked up. Like I could have very easily gotten hurt or something like that. So I thought it was an interesting insight into what it's like to go from being a civilian to being a police officer. And Chris, I would pose that question to you. How long do you think it took you to do the job safely?
Oh my gosh. You know what's so funny as you say that is, if you're honest with yourself, you can look back on your career and say, I can't believe we actually made it through the first couple of years, with just the whole cockiness of I know what I'm doing. And it's kind of funny is I remember working with veterans, because when I started, the way it worked was our swing shift were a bunch of veteran officers that at least minimum had 5+ years, up to 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And then we were the graveyard guys, and we would come in and we would overlap. And I remember they would give us those weird looks like, you guys are idiots, and I never understood that. I was like, God, don't be like, you guys are just a bunch of condescending jerks. But now I realize because they were watching us and, but I would say that I did to honestly feel like I was comfortable where I knew I could read body language, kind of get the perspective of what I thought somebody was going to do at least 4 or 5 years where I felt, comfortable, like it's like a prime example, Josh, you and I both know, when we stand in our position of advantage, the whole, strong leg back, hands in front of you, we're ready to go. I feel like nowadays, like when I'm out in public or even at Starbucks, I feel comfortable putting a hand in my pocket because I can read people. I can read the room, and I get that. When I know when I'm safe, I can like let my guard down. So I think it takes a long, not a long time, but it takes definitely 5+ years.
It takes way longer than it should.
Yeah,
to be honest, like it is incredible how much, because they'll talk about a lot of times with like teachers, they'll talk about classroom management, right? And they'll say, more experienced teachers have better classroom management, or that they handle that kind of stuff. Kind of the same thing when you're like I'm in marketing now, and just having the courage and understanding how to make a call, like how to make the right call, and go based on what the data is giving you and all that kind of stuff. In policing, it's not like if I screw up, we don't make sales, or it's not like if I screw up, only my boss is going to get mad at me and the customer I'm serving. Like you screw up, we watched it happen. I watched officers get into life-altering shootings, a year into the job, 2 years into the job, or do like dumb shit.
Yeah.
Like dumb as in like nowhere in the training manual does it say do XYZ. And it's because it's the first time they had experienced someone resisting. It's the first time they had somebody trying to pull a concealed weapon on them. There's a lot of this stuff that like, what are we doing? Like I remember like literally that exact same experience of like all of the senior officers kind of hating me early, and it was always the midnight guys, and it was because they had the experience. They understood that what I was doing was inherently unsafe, and so I'd get griped at, and I was like, oh fuck. And literally it was the moment I knew that I had kind of made it matured into that was they stopped bitching me out. Literally, it was like, okay. And then I started getting invited to serve warrants, or I started getting invited to what we knew was going to be a use of force. They were like, hey, go ahead and bring Josh, and I was like, what happened? Like overnight. And that's what it felt like. It was overnight, but they finally watched me do things by myself safely. I wasn't screaming on the radio like an idiot, and I was staging for calls I should have staged for, or I would show up even if they didn't ask me to show up to a call, knowing damn well it was going to get, weird, or they're in the middle of doing an investigation and I'm already going hands-on with somebody else unrelated to the scene because I'm trying to create scene safety. I was doing all of these things without being told, and he's like, he's finally seeing how much real danger we're actually in 90% of the time out here doing investigations. Yeah. And it's a weird, like, I remember being towards the tail end of my career, I had a bunch of rookies. I got moved to the north side of our town, which is really, really shitty. And most of the average seniority of the officers I had was less than 8 months. That was the average, which was awful. It's because they way outnumbered us, and we were at 2 to 4 years, like the four of us that weren't them. And I vividly remember working calls with a lot of these guys and them being like almost disgusted with how quickly I'd go hands on, or I'd put somebody in handcuffs, or I'd go and point a gun at somebody or whatever. They were like, how could you do that? That's not what we were taught. And I was like, well, you were taught in a safe environment. He's like, do you think it's weird that I do all of these things and never get in trouble? It's not because they like me. Trust me. I got kicked onto this shift with you buttholes because someone hates me in command staff. I was like, I know how to do the job safely. And there's a difference between, dealing with some irate 12-year-old that's, kicking and screaming and doing whatever versus dealing with a guy that I know has priors, or dealing with a guy that I know based on call text and based on body language. Hey, these are all pre-attack cues. These are all like if the alarms aren't going off in your head that you're in danger, clearly I don't trust you. And it makes me not like you because you're a liability.
Oh, yeah.
It's a weird, I finally got to experience the other side of that coin. It was literally, this was at year 4, literally. And that I finally started to be like annoyed. Not because I didn't like the kids, not because I didn't think that they were nice people, but I was like, you're kind of a shit cop, or at the very minimum, a liability because you don't see these safety things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a question, Josh, just because, I'm going with Texas and California. So, academy training. I want to get your perspective on this because,
Sure.
you definitely, you're an educated person, and I want to see if you see some of the things I see. Was your academy a stress academy where they yelled at you, punished you with push-ups?
Yeah. We had we and it was a blend because we had classroom time, right? Like where it was like lecture and we're sitting there, but there was always a threat. One of the dumb things that we ended up doing all the time, there was always a threat of getting smoked. And this is like dumb stuff. You forget a chore or you do a chore regret. We had a kid that put the Texas flag upside down on accident. It was the worst. So like you're there 8:00 in the morning every day, no matter what. Well, you're there at 7:50. The class starts at 8, but you're there at 7:50. And so we showed up and I think we were at that point where we had earned our uniform. You had to pass Fight Sim 1 and you would earn parts of your uniform as you went through our academy. Okay. And so I remember because I got injured right before Fight Sim 1, so I couldn't get medically cleared to do it. And everyone hated it because they all got to be in like somewhat of their uniform, and I'm still sitting there in like business casual. And they're like, Josh, like you need to fucking heal, like suck it up. I had like a cracked tailbone and like I didn't tell them about the tailbone because I knew it was going to kick me a class, but I had hyperextended a ligament in my shoulder, which hurt like a bitch. And finally, I just like forced myself to grit past like the test to show that I could do it. And the doctor kind of looked at me like, bro, like it's not that serious. And I'm like, no, it is that serious. I'm putting that I'm in academy. I'm a recruit at that point. But anyways, we're all sitting there in class, and right before the lecture starts, our corporal walks in. Corporal Knight, I fucking love this guy. He was everything you'd want in a corporal. Like he set unrealistic expectations for what I thought cops were going to be like. Super cool guy. He walks in there and he's like, everybody get the fuck up. And we're like, oh man, we fucked up. And so he walks us all outside and we stand there, and everyone that was from Texas knew the second we got out there what had been fucked up. And so the Texas flag, and you guys can like Google it or whatever, just a star, and there's, a red stripe on the bottom and a, white stripe on top. Well, it had been inverted, so it's a pentagram, and then the red on top and the white on bottom. Oh. And so we all kind of sat there and we're like, oh yeah, we fucked up like this. And it's a we. We were far enough in academy that we knew like this is a we problem, not a they problem, right? And so we got smoked. There was a small, they called it the dog pound. It was literally a dog pound, but there was like a mound, and they used to smoke us on that. Or there was a dam, like maybe like 200 yards south of, it was south of our academy. And it was like damn near half a football field tall. And it was like a 30-degree incline. So they'd run us out to it, which was like a 3/4 of a mile run. It wasn't that bad. But the fucking hill was atrocious. And we got the hill that day. It was awful. But we got every week you could fail, and if you failed that week, you were gone. And then you only had like there was a lot of stressors. If you didn't get up in base, even if you were taking a shit, and a fucking instructor saw you not get up in base, and for those of you that do jujitsu, you want 3 points of contact or whatever to the ground, they would call you on it. and you would at the end of class that day have to go and stand up in front of the whole academy, stand at attention and say, my name is Officer Dumbass and I failed to get up in base. For that, we're going to do 27 get up, and we got to like 50 something. Oh, it was awful. And what sucked is on a day that you had like 4 violations from it, even if it was the same person, they had to do it twice. You would do 26 of them, and then you would do 27 of them, and then you do 28 of them, and then you do, so you're doing like 150 get up in base, fucking basically like baby burpees is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
Until we were done. God forbid somebody lied about having a base violation, because they'd come check, because somebody might randomly catch you and then not be there at the end of it, and then they'll ask your corporal later, like, oh, how many did they do? Did so-and-so do? And we got caught. Somebody fucking lied on that. We got caught. I don't know. Yeah, we got smoked. We got smoked a lot, and we got yelled at and all the whole nine. Yeah.
So do you agree with that? Because there's philosophies now. As I'm doing, I do research on high stress academies, low stress academies, no stress academies. Do you agree with? Okay, because here's the thing. I should say, people say that because of these high stress academies, this is what produces asshole cops. I mean, we'll just throw it there, asshole cops. So do you agree with that, or do you think maybe it's do you agree with that analogy, I should say?
So I'd say no, and I think the biggest reason why you cannot have sympathy for something you don't understand, and I think most of these academics have never experienced anything like the quote or the example I'll try to give is why they make us get tased if we're going to carry a taser, right? Or why they OC us if we're going to cover OC. OC days sucks. OC days awful. And it really motivates you to fucking not use it, right? But the same thing, like we have to I got handcuffed by 38 other people that were learning how to and training handcuffs are the fucking worst because they're like kind of rusty, and you get the fucking asshole that's trying to be a big shot and like cramming these things backwards on your wrist, and it's stupid. But like you learn every technique that we leveraged all the way up to vascular neck restraints back when those were kosher, we did to each other. And we knew exactly how much pressure it was okay to put on people. And then we did jujitsu. I was putting every kind of fucking pretzel you could ask. And I think a lot of it has to do, there's a cost benefit curve here. I think it can be super extreme. If we're out here like smoking kids at 2:00 in the morning just to be an asshole, like they're not going to be Navy SEALs, okay? They're truly not. And do we need police officers to be that? No. But I do think that there has to be a level of stress inoculation training, which is what the idea and the principle behind this, and we can thank the military for this. You will not perform well under the kind of stress you're going to get as a police officer if you're not exposed to it in a safe environment first. And a pass or fail needs to be, how do you deal with that stress? How do you deal with not getting sleep? How do you deal with someone kind of treating you like shit on purpose? How do you deal with? Because I vividly remember like the week we graduated academy, and you're still. I think they got like a bunch of random shit. You have to sign a bunch of forms and sign up for like insurance and stuff like that right before you hit the street. There's like special police insurance that you sign up for. We were commissioned at that point. We had done the oath, and we got to wear the uniform, and they gave us our guns, and we were walking around academy. We weren't assigned to a beat yet, but we were fully fledged police officers. I was shocked at how nice everyone was. I was like, holy shit, like these guys have been treating me like shit for like 7 months, and you kind of thought that they were just mean, really and truly. Going from like a college, because my department, it required a degree, so you came from like your liberal arts college, right? Where they're asking you, how do you identify and all this shit? Your name's now like shit for brains or whatever. And there's like months of like everything you do, they're like criticizing the fuck out of. And nothing you do is correct. You had some people that like kind of sick fucks that were like really into it, right? Like they were like, oh yeah, I get to go abuse some rookies or some recruits today. And then like that, you were part of the group. And it's because they're like, well, I'm no longer training you. My portion of training you is done. So, and they treated literally every interaction. It didn't matter if you were fucking opening a door for somebody. They were evaluating every little interaction, but that's what policing is like. That's what real world policing is like.
Yeah.
They care. I get mad every time someone will say spread your legs as opposed to spread your feet because they're stressed. You have somebody that's yelling at you, you just got in a fight or a pursuit, and you're having to go hands-on, and you just, because your brain isn't working, it doesn't sound inappropriate to you to say that or whatever. And you're like, but all these little things fucking matter. Because sometimes that's the difference between you and a lawsuit, or that's the difference between you. They talk about de-escalation all the time in these fucking academic circles that they think they know everything. A lot of that, you even have to have the brain operating in a functional space to even try to de-escalate. But that doesn't happen without stress. You literally have to, it's called stress inoculation, but I think asshole cops come out of bad morale, or asshole cops come out of having to work really bad sides of town for a long period of time. I don't really think you get, where I think training honestly fails people is I don't know that it's stressful enough. And that sounds shitty for the new rookies coming in, but I was like, it's apparent because they're clearly failing in the real world where they shouldn't be.
I agree. I totally agree with what you just said, because that you gotta have that stress in a safe environment. You know, that's what is freaking awesome. You know about that. That you put it great, because like you're right. When you're in that situation, when you're pointing your gun, you don't know if you're going to live or die. You could say the stupidest shit. You know, I mean, and yeah. Hey, so I'll let you answer this part too, Josh. For me, so we had a super chat. It says, do your SWAT team have helmet cams and 9-bangers? So for us, no, we don't have helmet cams. We just use our regular body cams on the vest, and we don't have 9-bangers. We just have a regular one flashbang, or we have smoke, we have CS, we have what do you call it? Stinger without CS and Stinger with CS. But that's all.
Stinger with CS, god dang, dude, you're really fucked up if you get that.
Okay, so here's a funny story, Josh. When you get assigned, or you finally get put to the SWAT team, and you go to SWAT school and you come back, your initiation. They won't say it. It's an initiation, but you get put into a 4x4 room, and they deploy a Stinger with CS, and you're not in full kit.
No!
You're in a short sleeve T-shirt with
you do this. You cover your eyes and your nuts.
That's all you're doing, and they deploy it, and it's just like, oh, you got to know. It's like we all know why you're doing it. You're doing it.
Yeah, I get it. Well, and I'll say this: it's interesting. A lot of people talk about hazing, right? And we had this experience. So when I was in, and I'll give you 2 examples of this. When I was in high school, me and producer Juan, actually, we were in band together. And they called it freshman initiation. And all they would do is they would dress you up in a stupid costume, or they'd find something dumb, and the more obnoxious, the more ridiculous. And they'd make you march in formation through a store singing the fight song, just singing it. And you're in marching band, so like you play instruments or whatever. And they would do that. It would be funny. And then they'd take you out to eat in that same costume. And typically this was his upperclassmen doing this to you. Well, later, some fucking idiot kid ended up letting their freshmen go down the damn hill, and they fell off something and got hurt, and so they couldn't do it anymore because it was seen as hazing, right? And Chris and I are explaining that the experiences we had coming into a lot of it, and it was, you were getting initiated. I remember even formally, I was formally hazed by like, hey man, there's overtime sitting on there, and everyone would look at you because you're the lowest badge number, or you're the highest badge number, and they're like, hey rookie, like this is your fucking overtime shift. I went from working like on average this was in like 2017. This is not like there's no COVID nonsense, there's none of that. This was like I was averaging 15 to 20 hours of overtime a week.
That's amazing.
And as a rookie, because we were shorthanded, and of course as a rookie, it was your shit. Like it was. They basically, so there was me and one other person that was like really close to me. We were both rookies. We would take turns taking overtime shifts, because if not, I was fortunately not the lowest ranking person. I had a classmate that had a slightly higher badge number than I did. But we would take turns just to not be dicks. And sure enough, when I was fucking more senior officers, like fuck that shit, I'm never taking that unless I wanted it. Daddy wanted something nice. Sure, he'd take some overtime, but like, and you'd know. And that's literally like institutionalized hazing that's technically happening, as opposed to making it fair and just having people take turns. But like that's part of trusting someone, and part of feeling closer to someone is experiencing that. It's a weird, fucked up. When you listen to football players talk about two-a-days, they do it as a training exercise because it's a good way to get you in shape quickly. It's a good way to inoculate your body to the stress of playing football and all that stuff. But there's this weird common bond that football players have. Like, yeah, bro, two-a-days suck. You remember two-a-days? And they'll talk about that. And it's this odd, even if you don't like that person, you can at least empathize with that person. Yeah. And so it kind of all goes back to, whether or not stress-based academies make sense. These other officers that are already out there are experiencing the real stress of the job. If you come out of academy having not experienced anything except for a fucking classroom, it was the most like ego-crushing thing to happen to you as a rookie when a suspect called you out as a rookie. Oh, you must be new. Oh, you must be a rookie, because they deal with cops all the time. Yeah, this guy's like 100th arrest, and he resists like 80% of the time, right? And he knows when he's getting bodied by a grown ass man that's a corporal or whatever. He knows, and he's like, okay, like I'm not trying to get my ass kicked. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and put my hands up. But he sees, and you'll see it. It's like the middle school dance. And sir, please, can you stop reaching for your sir, please? Right. Please. And it's like, bro, you have hands, use them. Like, what do you stop asking someone that you're about to take to jail for a felony warrant to stop putting their hands in their pockets? Like, Jesus.
It's so funny you say that, because they know it. Yeah, the suspects know it. And it's so funny is because, like, I know when I've shown, like, they'll say, I want to talk to your supervisor, right? And so inherently, the new guys will always call the supervisor, right? And tell them to say, shut the fuck up, supervisor in the jail, right? So I'll head out there and I'll get out there and I'll like, what's going on? Oh, he wants to talk to you. And I'm like, what does he want to talk to me about? While he's being arrested. And I'm like, all right. So I'll come. What's going on? I want to, you know what? Why don't you just shut the fuck up, arrest him. I'll talk to you at the jail. He's in charge. Right now, I don't want to listen to a fucking word you have to say, and they're just like, shit. It's so funny because I wear long sleeves, Josh. So I have my stripes.
Let's say down here.
Yeah, dude, I can honestly say it's pretty impressive. I have 6 stripes, and they're just like looking at it like, and I usually like what to do is I like to have that look when I walk on scene. So I'll throw a shitload of sunflower seeds in my mouth.
Oh yes.
I'll have that ball right here, and I'm like,
oh, I fucked up.
What do you want to talk about?
I will say this. I was very lucky, and it's a pretty decent-sized police department also based out of town, that you had corporals that wouldn't let you. Like, they'd be like, no, bro, you don't need a supervisor. Like, you need to chill the fuck out. Because you go through that stress of not knowing, because it's new to you. But yeah, if I had a lieutenant showing up on a call, and I was trying to finish that call really quickly. I was like,
Oh, what's so funny is my officers know my reaction, and they know that I shouldn't say this, especially on this stream. they'll tell the suspect, you don't want my boss.
You want my supervisor.
He's worse. And they're like, no, I want to talk to your lieutenant. And all right. And I get there, and they're leaving. And I've heard him say, or I've been watching body cam footage. You're right. I should have never called for that guy. I got a question in my chat. Did you see it? Okay. What's the strangest police case you have ever been in?
Man, I'd have to think about that.
I know that's here's what I try to tell people when they send us questions like that.
Think about that.
There has to be a perspective, because when people say, well, what's the funniest call you've been on? Well, there's different types of calls.
It also depends on the type of humor you're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the funniest death scene I've been on, the funniest traffic collision that I've been on, the funniest, because Josh, there's sometimes people die not in the best positions.
Yeah, dude.
Sometimes they die doing things that their family didn't know they were into.
I had the most romantic dual unintentional suicide. These guys, they were best friends. They had the same birthday. It was like within a day of each other. Oh my God. And they took heroin together. I don't know, for fun or whatever. And so the girlfriends, who were also like a little high, they had made a fuckload of food. And they called 911. Hey, both of our boyfriends passed out. And so we go code because there's a guy coding. Well, they knew there was drugs involved, so fire was going to stage. Because they were like, hey, this is a drug house or whatever, so we don't want to get there quickly, right? So I was like, fuck, we got to show up and verify that the people need emergency help so emergency services can get on there. So we show up, and these guys like made like this really cute, like it almost looked like they were posed there, but there was like a tiny bathroom. It was like a 3 foot by 4 foot bathroom, right? It's like enough space for a shitter and the sink. And these guys clearly had shot up the heroin there, and boom, died dead on the door now, right then and there. And so we walked in, and these are two 350+ pound men. These are humongous. So they barely fit on the floor in this bathroom. And I look in there and I was like, bro, old boy here's purple, and old boys, and they've only been dead for a couple. I was like, they just had a brain aneurysm or whatever. They're gone. Like, and I checked for pulse, and I'm doing sternum rubs, and I'm like, I'm sternum rubbing a bag of flesh here. Like these guys are gone. So we're clearing the scene or whatever. And I'm sitting there with Crystalline was my partner at the time. I was looking at her and I was like, not gonna lie, they went out like homies. Like they're together. Like it was just something you'd see out of like those like weird video game side quests. Or it's like two people clearly bitching at each other in the afterlife. I was like, this is exactly how this went down. But like that's a weird, like we find that funny, but most people would be like, oh my god, you walked in on a double overdose. And I was like, yeah, it's the way they fell though was kind of perfect.
So this wasn't the strangest call I went on, but this is when I really realized that my sense of, or I should say my what's the best way to say it? My callousness was like, there was no. So my partner and I was a motor officer, and we were responded to a rollover traffic collision. Actually, we got called, but patrol had responded to a rollover traffic collision.
Yeah,
and the person was half ejected, and she died. Right. So the car's on its side. She's hanging outside of the car, and her obviously broken neck, whatever, killed her. Right.
Sure.
Young girl. Well, at that particular time, our coroner's office was telling us not to cover the bodies with a blanket because of the whole core temperature thing.
I see.
They didn't want the core temperature to be altered so they can tell time of death. Okay. So we're waiting, and my motorcycle is literally parked, probably 6 feet from the car.
Sure.
And I'm leaning up against it. My partner's leaning up against it, and on my seat, I have my In-N-Out burger and my fries and my soda, and I'm sitting there eating, and I'm like, and I look over to my partner Ricky, and I'm like, hey Ricky, and he's all here. He goes, oh, and he's all, here's funny guy. He's all, what's up, Chris? And I'm like, we're pretty fucked up in the head. He's all like, and I put my burger down, and he's all, why would you say that, Chris? And I grab my French fries and I get some ketchup. I don't know, Ricky. I don't know why I would make that comment. I'm sitting there eating my burger 6 feet from this dead body, where other people would be horrified. They would be like, they would have to go to a shrink for the rest of their life.
I always felt bad, like when I stopped being solemn. Yeah. Like I remember the first couple of like death notifications or whatever I had to make. Like, you're like really solemn and trying to be respectful or whatever. I had a whole EMS are the worst. Y'all are some sick fucks. But we had a guy had hung himself on a I don't know how he did it. He's just kind of a skinny dude. He hung himself on the garage door opener. So like that metal track that runs on the garage door. So he'd hung himself. Well, his parents, he was like 30 something. His parents were looking for him. They made him as a missing person. So we go to the house to go like start taking the missing persons report. And we're like, just poke around or whatever. We just happened to walk through the garage. They didn't use but for anything but for storage. We fucking found the guy there. And I was like, we were just shocked that it held him. And we're sitting there having a whole ass conversation about like, man, what brand of garage door opener? So we're here for like a good 20 minutes, like joking about this. And a neighbor comes by and hears us like laughing. And so they didn't realize what we were on and the way that the guy was hung. Like the garage door was like partially open, but you couldn't really see him. Guy walks up and we don't notice him walking up because we're all laughing like a bunch of old ladies. And it's a low stress call for us because, I mean, it's just a dead, but we can't do anything now. My part of the job's done, right?
Yeah.
We're not life saving. We're just here waiting for the ME. And this person walks up sees us laughing, and then sees the dead body and is like, just slowly walks away, like, what the fuck? And I was like, oh, this is gonna be a write-up. I was like, for sure.
Are laughing at a dead body.
Exactly. I was like, oh wow. And it's probably like a neighbor too, which is worse. They probably knew the fucking guy. And I was like, damn it.
I know, it's like and so like going back to the strangest stories, there's just like so many. I mean, and you know that, Josh. There's just
that's kind of like saying like
tell us your
like
best.
yeah, or like if you're a foodie, like what's the best meal you've ever had or something like that. Like I don't know, like they all got a different flavor of weird.
Yeah. They do.
I don't know. I think most of them that kind of creep me out were we called them Signal 20, but it was like crazy people calls because they did some weird shit.
Oh,
those were weird as opposed to like strange. I didn't have any creepy ones though. No. We had a guy. This one was fun. The call went out as it was like an attempted burglary. This guy's neighbor, a little tiny Asian guy, was like banging on his neighbor's door, trying to get in or whatever. He was high. And so 2 officers get dispatched. I wasn't dispatched to the call, but I was like, it's attempted burglary. Like, this guy's going to run or going to fight or whatever. So I start rolling to get close. And as the officers make scene, like they were 1097, we're like 10 seconds later, give us the channel, send us units code. And I was like, oh, fuck, well, I'm here. So me and one of the rookies that was with me, we were running, and you can hear him screaming. And OC had got deployed and all this shit. So I walk in not knowing OC had been deployed, and there's white powdery shit like all over the counter banister of this. This guy had grabbed one of the officers' guns and pulled on it so hard it like moved his belt like 90 degrees. And there's satanic like porn playing in the background while we're fighting this guy who's high out of his mind. And it looks like what's like latent cocaine like everywhere. My eye, and all of us, our eyes are burning. We're all coughing because he like OC'd the guy in a fucking apartment that's like a 200 square foot apartment. So finally we get the guy into custody, and he's like yelling like crazy satanic shit the whole time. And I'm like, bro, we get the fuck. You start looking around the walls, and you start seeing shit on the walls. You're like, bro, this is some bruja shit. I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't want any part of this. But it was like a weird, like I expected just a fight, and then like as we're getting the guy into custody, I pick my head up and I start looking around, and I'm like, hey, what the fuck is on the TV? And then I'm like, what the hell's over here? It was a weird. I couldn't unsee. That was way more disturbing than seeing dead people. So,
yeah. So I got a question. I got to personally answer for Poofy, but I was going to say, you brought up a really good point, or you brought up a memory for me, Josh, and I'll end the strangest with the question with that. It's just a very innocuous call. So we got a call about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning at one of our junior high schools, and they said that someone's in the field. So, and these apartment complex would overlook the field where the kids would play, right?
Sure.
My partner and I, we pull up. Well, Josh, just about a half hour before that call came in, the ground fog started to come in.
Oh no!
Yeah, and it's cold. It's cold. It's not cold, but just cold enough, right?
Sure.
So my partner and I, we get out of the car. And, we're walking through the field, and sure as shit, there is a guy standing in the middle of the field, and he's like this, with his head down, and he's just doing this. And I'm like, sir, and he's not responding. And I'm like, and we're getting closer, and we're shining our lights on him, and then the fog's just enough. And I look over to my partner, I said, this is that part of when I'm watching the movie, when I'm all, this is where the cops get killed, right? This is where, and I look over to my partner and I say, I'm going to tell you right now, if he makes any sound that's not human, I'm putting 2 in heads. I am not going to be I'm not being patient 0 on the zombie apocalypse. And what ended up funny, the end of the gist of the story was that he actually was a transient, and he was in hypothermia. So
he couldn't read. He's not there.
Yeah. So because we got FD out there, and they did their thing, but I just remember that was just that creepiest call, because when I watch scary movies and you see where the scene where the cop's about to die, you're like, I wouldn't do that shit. And then I remember I'm in this field and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, we do stupid shit.
And you have to, like, it's your job. Like it's what I said earlier about doing the job safely. It's like, once you know, like you knowingly do unsafe things, but at least you know it's unsafe versus when you're new, like you're just doing dumb shit and not realizing it.
So let's see here. We got, I'll answer Poofy's question real quick, and then we have another one at the top. So Poofy asked, he wants me to tell a story about the guy that survived 3 shots point blank from an MP5 on the hostage rescue I was part of.
Jeez.
So I'll do a quick version of the story. So, ladies and gentlemen, so we had this is actually a pretty good story in overall. So patrol gets a call of a white guy dragging a black kid through Rite Aid. Like dragging him. The kid is I'm sorry, and they said a male transient, Caucasian, dragging a black kid through Rite Aid, and so this doesn't look right. So patrol gets there, and when the first officer gets there, there is a white guy and there's a black kid with him. As soon as the officer goes to confront him, he pulls out a gun and puts it to the kid's head, and says, "Don't come any closer." So what ends up eventually happening is this guy's able to back off enough, and he barricades himself in a Chinese food restaurant, but in the bathroom. So SWAT gets called. So we get there. Well, the backstory so we get there. CNT's doing their stuff. Crisis negotiation team, they're doing their stuff. They're trying to talk this guy down. The team's being deployed, but it's 2 days before Christmas, so a lot of our team is already out of town. Yep. I happen to be around. I was just getting ready to leave the office. I was a detective at the time when we got activated, so I was around the corner. I came back, so I'm part of the 4-man arrest team just in case he does come out. So during negotiations, and I'll go back to the cool part of the story after. So long story short is, eventually our team leader decides when he opens this door again. Because our negotiations are going down. He starts talking about him and his son are going to see Jesus. So we realize he's about to do his son. And we got to confirm handgun, all that type of stuff. So as soon as he opens the door, literally point blank, our team leader drops 3 rounds. And one here, and one here. Boom, boom, boom. And the door closes. Well, our breacher was with us. Our breacher, big guy. I'm talking about, this is the type of guy
as breacher should be.
A breacher should be. He goes to kick the door, the team leader goes to kick the door to get the door open right away, but he falls back because the door was a metal frame. There wasn't a wood frame, so it wasn't going to give. So he falls back. Well, when the breacher goes up to kick the door, same thing happens, but at that same time, so he goes down. So my partner, he's a big guy too. I have the RAM between my legs, so I pick up the RAM, and he goes, "Give me the RAM," and I hand him the RAM. He gets the RAM and he rams the door, and so he shoulders the door so I could go in and get the kid. When he shoulders the door, as I'm about to grab the kid who's on the ground, the suspect's sitting against the toilet in the corner, 3 gunshot wounds, and he blinks, and I'm like, he's alive. And then he points his gun up, and then the gun battle's on. Starts dropping rounds, and I'm talking about that when that's in that move in Black Hawk Down, when the guy says, "How do you know they're not shooting at you?" When you hear a whiz, yeah. But when that went, and I'm like, whoo, it was like, it literally went right by my ear. Gun battle happens. Long story short, we able to neutralize him. I hate the words that we use, right? Neutralize. It should be, when we actually killed him.
We killed that motherfucker,
we saved the kid, blah, 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 blah. So here's the backstory, though. That was his father. That was his biological father. And what ended up happening was, this guy, his name was, I think it was Edgar's. I have to look up the name. He was wanted. He was actually on America's Most Wanted. He had killed his baby mama 3 years prior. He had bludgeoned her with a dumbbell. They went on the run, and he was a child actor. He was in Pee-wee's Playhouse, Battlestar Galactica. He was a kid actor. He was in all of these different various kid shows as a kid actor. But they had been on the run for 3 years, and we have the biggest bus terminal on the west of the Mississippi in my city. So everything shows up there, of course, right before it goes to Los Angeles. Well, they had gotten off the bus and they had gone to Rite Aid because the kid was cold and they were going to get socks, but the kid was he was just being a kid, and so it looked like they were having this, someone was dragging his kid through. So that was the story. That was the whole entire story of.
Wow.
And it was So here's the funny part about the kid. The kid lived. The kid did a hat trick on me. So, Josh, you get into a police shooting, you almost lose your life, or you not lose your life, but you could have lost your life. All those things play in your mind, right? So when we deploy the flashbang into the thing to get finally into there, my partner, another SWAT operator, is able to find the kid through the smoke, and he hands me the kid, and I'm thinking to myself, and because I'm the medic at that time, don't be hit, don't be hit, don't be hit. And the kid, he does this to me as I have him in my arms. And I'm running out with him to assess him. He goes like this: "Why did you shoot me?" And I'm like, "Oh shit,
no!"
hit. So then, as I drop him down to the ground and I start cutting his clothes off to find if he's been hit, he looks at me and says, "Why didn't you kill my daddy?" And I'm like, "Oh my," So that's now in back of my mind. So now I'm doing my assessment, right? And then I go to squeeze his hips to make sure, and then all of a sudden blood pours out of one of his testicles while a round had blown his right testicle out. And so he was hit. So we're bandaging him. The fire department medics show up, and so they got the gurney there. So I go to pick up the gurney. I go to pick him up and put him on the gurney. And as I'm walking him to the gurney, he says, "Today's my birthday." And I'm like, "Shut the fuck up!" What the fuck? It's like I just got into the battle of my life, and you got shot. You killed your daddy, and then it's 2 days before Christmas. So it's like, so he goes off, and it's so funny. As I remember, I'm leaning up against our armored vehicle. Yeah. And one of the guys walks up and he's all like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "Were you hit?" And I'm like, "No, why?" And he's all, "Well, someone's blood's on you." Well, the gun battle had been going on so long that every time a bullet had hit the suspect, blood.
I bet. Yeah.
But yeah, that was the story there. Dude.
That's wild. That is a wild. I have nothing close to that.
Let's see here. Do you deal with someone who is possessed? No, I've seen some crazy people.
I'm about to say I'm possessed with drugs, but never actual possession.
Yeah. What's funny is, have you ever heard this, Josh? That the Catholic Church has acknowledged that their exorcist unit is in overdrive right now. That they don't have enough exorcists to deploy across the world.
So it's interesting too, because and so my tinfoil hat's pretty tall, right? And I was talking to a friend of mine about this. This was years ago. They were talking about when you actually look into how they have to qualify even sending one. You can't just your exorcism priests. Not every church has one. You got to imagine I'm in the South here. We got Catholic churches all over the place. They investigate initially. Well, what's going on, right? Because they have an obligation as the priest of the church to go check it out. And if they feel that there's something weird, they apply to have another person come and check it out that's more of an exorcism expert. And then they have to apply to somebody else, and they got to fly somebody out. They have their church SWAT team, basically, that you have a very highly trained and vetted person. Your exorcism doing priest is a very rare individual within the clergy. It's a very rare. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said, Josh. It fascinates me because we watch spooky movies. You got the movie The Exorcist, and you got all these other, the Lorraine Warren, and so what I love about it is, here's the funny part is you hear people talk about it and they're like, "Oh, I don't believe in that shit," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. Hey, can I ask you a question?" And they're like, "Yeah," and I said, "Do you believe in God?" "Well, of course." Well. Let me just throw you this little bit out of Genesis. 1/3 of the angels were cast out of heaven. Is that a third? Here's always my question: is it a third of 100? Is it a third of 1,000? Is it a third of 1,000,000? And it's funny is because it says that in not to get religious, but even the Bible it says, "I am the God of everything seen and unseen."
Yeah.
Whoa, what do you mean by unseen?
Well, and I think it's interesting because having gone and interacted with the parts of society that most people don't see, let's be honest. Yeah. There's some of it where I'm like, there's criminality. There's like robbing people or doing drugs or assaults or whatever that I can kind of tie to. Okay, well, part of my degrees in psychology, and I can sit there and talk about this person's experiencing stress. Or this person, there's some shit I've seen that's straight fucking evil, like straight like. Go for those of you that want to know. Go look at films like Sicario and stuff like that, and you'll see that there are facets of the criminal element that openly and actively worship the devil. Literally, I walked into one apartment where I was like, "Holy shit!" Like, well, this is some weird. And so, like, if not for cool points, I guess in their mind, for like, let's say you're coming at this completely agnostically, why is it that there's always these like violent elements to criminality, and why is there always this? And you could talk about it's a power thing, or you could talk about whatever, but like ultimately, there's a handful of things I saw that I was like, this person clearly is engaged in wanting this very weird hedonistic lifestyle, and that the level of violence and the level of like joy these people get out of hurting other people, and they're not sociopaths.
No,
these are just they are. I'm not going to say possessed, but they have been taken by this idea or this concept of evil, and they fully. It's why I'll never go anywhere without a gun. It's why there's a 45 and a Bible by my side, and if those two things can't sort it out, I guess it's my time. But it's like that's a real. Like I said, I haven't had per se like an straight up like ghost encounter, but like the concept of evil, I think would be stupid to acknowledge it. If you acknowledge any level of deity, to think that. And also the other thing, and my wife and I were talking about this the other day, how frequently you'll see like Wiccan stuff now. I remember growing up, like it was very rare or weird to see like a straight up Wiccan like stone or whatever. I'm like, you have whole companies now designed around proliferating this paraphernalia, right? Oh, yeah. And I'm like, when I pray, I'm praying to God, right? What are you praying to? Yeah. Like what spirit are you This is tarot cards or Ouija boards or reading someone's palms a little different. But like a lot of this stuff, like again, if this is the conversation we're having and if we're using deductive reasoning in it, what are you talking to? What's giving you foresight? What's giving you? Because sometimes you run into it and you're like, that's kind of creepy. Like a.
Yeah, it's funny as you say that whole the Sicario thing. Mm-hmm. I got scared. I can honestly say I got very unnerved. We served a search warrant on on part of ended up being part of the cartel, and the cartel's freaky, dude. You know that, and especially being in Texas, you know it more than I do.
Yeah.
But when we got to the garage, there was the altar, mm-hmm. and God, the altar, it scared me. It literally scared the shit out of me because, we don't wear balaclavas, so our faces, the bad guys saw our faces and stuff like that. Not that I fear them coming back, but it's just one of those things where it does unnerve you, and then like you just said right now, who are they praying to? What are they worshiping? Who are they asking protection from?
And think about it this way. This is between Chris and I, right? How much dumb shit do you think we've done collectively? Right? And this is drive cars fast, point guns at people. These are two individuals that find this stuff exciting because we're dumb enough to have signed up to do the job, right? We have done it so much that we're jaded, and we're over here laughing at dead bodies and eating fucking In-N-Out and whatever. Yeah. But that I could hold a person in my arms and watch them die and think like, well, damn, I'm going to have to fucking tell somebody now. That's my first thought. That's kind of shitty, but that's my first thought. I've had very close friends and family of mine that died. I still don't have that same. I feel bad that I don't have that same reaction anymore. Like it is a diminished version of me because that like mourning or creepy person, like the person that feels bad about those instances has been like weathered thin. And I think it's kind of there's this not to get Tolkien-esque, but like you become like butter spread over too much bread. Yeah. You feel that way emotionally a lot of times when it comes to tragedy and stuff like that. We're both that freaked out about that shit. There's like, because that I don't have, I'm ill-equipped, I feel like at times to deal with that kind of scary or that kind of bad. And so just wrap your head around that. If Chris and I, and mind you, we're also maybe a little bit more open to the idea of paranormal things. But that being said, there's not too many things that would scare Chris and I that goes bump in the night. Normally, we are that bump in the night, but
Exactly.
when we're scared of it, then just think about that next time you think about it.
I always tell people that, Josh, is that
Mhm.
people don't understand the world that you and I live in. That's
Sure.
what and other first responders. They don't. People will, and that's the other part. People will never, ever,
Yeah.
ever see or unless they join, will never see and
Sure.
understand the world we live in. And it's a whole other world. Hence the reason why you, like you said, that's why you go every place with a gun. That's why you have a 45 on your nightstand, because we live in a different world, and that's just it is what it is. And it sucks. It really, really sucks. And to watch, and like I said, you guys are in Texas, to watch how society is just literally collapsing in front of us. And it is. People don't realize that society is collapsing in front of us. That's what they don't realize. But we see it. We see it every day, from the homelessness to the drugs to the crime. That's that the crime is out of control. It's like, and before here's a good question to ask you. I think it's too late. I don't think, even if they unhandcuff all law enforcement, I think it's too late. I don't think we can get law and order back.
And I try not to typically go down this path and have this conversation, but having experienced it, and it's a lot of, I feel bad saying it. This is a big reason as to why I'm out. This is a big reason why Chris still has probably a lot left in the tank to do the job. He doesn't have a lot left. I think the fatigue that everyone collectively felt and is feeling currently in law enforcement is that we all see it, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Like the writings on the wall I went from somehow in a year and a half of being on patrol, from loving the job, being very proud of my job, and enthusiastically showing up every day. And that's well after the shitty calls. That's well after coming out of the rookie phase and getting into being a veteran or whatever, to like, this shit ain't worth dying for.
Yeah.
That's a weird, and it like, really think about that. And I say it to be honest, because I think it's fair to the people that are out there that can't say this, but like, that's what's coming in the back of their mind, is like, I'm gonna die and it's gonna keep getting worse.
Yeah.
If I died at the altar of society and me giving my life got everybody to wake the fuck up and like give a shit about crime, maybe. I can't think of a single cop that's doing it for the right reasons that wouldn't do that. I remember my wife, I had this conversation with her after I left, that I had a handful of calls that I knew I was okay dying at. This is like school shootings and stuff like that. And she knew, even after I got commissioned, I told her, I was like, if I'm doing something dumb, knew that I did it because I wanted to. Nobody tells your husband to do fucking anything, right? But like, there are certain calls, and you got to think of like 9/11 and the Dallas 5 when that happened here in North Texas. Fuck the shootout that happened, the LA shootout, one of the biggest shootouts that ever happened in law enforcement. These guys willingly ran to danger for society. You know, it's a burden you take on it. That's what the weight of that badge really is like, hey man, your life is technically less important than everyone else's because we equip you with the ability to go do it. But like, it's kind of like being part of a group project that nobody else gives a fuck about, but you have the most to lose. And that's what it feels like. City managers stopped giving a fuck decades ago, right?
Yeah.
Mayors stopped giving a fuck decades ago. Politicians decades ago. And so like the fruit of that is starting to come out with the sheer level of violence that we're dealing with on the streets. And it's wild. And it's like, it's kind of like a fire. That's the best way I can kind of describe it. If you've ever seen like a brush fire, it always starts off as like a fucking ember that gets loose from you, right? And the epicenter of it looks awful, right? So you can talk about Chicago, there's parts of LA, there's parts of Houston where it's a fucking meat grinder. Like, I'm talking, you're so used to hearing gunshots, knowing that those aren't like desk pops. That is somebody getting shot at. And you're like, well, I wonder if somebody's going to call this one in.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder. Because sometimes they just don't. And we'll drive through there and whatever. I guess they got shoveled into some pit somewhere, so we'll never find them. That's the reality of it. Or watching kids, you know, basically being used as cattle. You know, watching human trafficking, stuff like that. And this is all it's a side effect of apathy from society, because people, and you could talk about like moral values and all this kind of stuff, but in general, everyone else sees that as someone else's problem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they think that they read a book or read an article, so they have the fucking answer, and they're like, we need less stressful academies, we need more de-escalation. And I was like, you've no idea the monster. Like it's like sitting in a swamp, right? And the fucking kid that doesn't know what's going on is like, bro, there's like alligators in there. You think you're putting on bug spray, thinking you're going to be safe, from the most dangerous thing here. And I'm like, okay. I spent enough time in the swamp that I was like, you know what? I'm going to go sit on the shore and I'm going to go let y'all fucking sort it out.
So let me ask you this question. And that was well said. So you brought up all the stuff like human trafficking, all that type of stuff that you had to control. I know you guys did a breakdown. You guys did a breakdown of End of Watch.
Yeah.
Tell me what you liked most out of End of Watch, and tell me what you didn't like out of End of Watch. I mean, what part of your copness did you like? Did you have a problem with? Because though I liked End of Watch, there was parts of it where I knew it was Hollywood. I mean, don't get me wrong, they did a good job.
They did a pretty good job. Yeah, I think the amount of action these guys saw in such a short amount of time, I was like, okay, that's a little unrealistic. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm not saying that wasn't someone's career, because I guarantee you in some big fucking LA County too, I'm sure. I think what they did well, and this is the one, and to this day, it kind of sticks to me more. There's a call where they go in and there's a couple talking about their kids missing, and they're fucking high out of their mind. Like they're super blitz out of their mind. And his cop spidey sense started tingling, like there's something wrong here. And he ended up finding these kids duct taped in a closet. And it upsets me even talking about it, because I have to think about it. But like how often that was the case. Like there was, you'd go find I'd find a mom completely butt-ass naked in a motel room that she didn't rent. It's someone there, and there's a kid on the bed crying, wondering why mom's pretending and why mom won't stop pretending. Yeah. Like trying to explain that to a 6-year-old or to a 5-year-old, or like again, like finding them on the side of the freeway. Like, well, my mom said she'd only be gone for a little while, or my dad said she'd only be gone for a little while, so we're picking up the kid and trying to find mom, and mom's in some fucking ditch somewhere. Like it's a weird, like there's a grind on you. Like there's a hard, and it's what makes us these kind of cruel. What makes asshole cops? That's what makes asshole cops. Right. And because to you, like the civilian, it's so easy to see somebody in need and think, oh, that person's in need, and not have seen like what created that set of circumstances.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If you truly understood what made that set of like the apathetic family, or the shitty friends, or like just the completely irresponsible adult that like created this environment that now, and again, you'll donate some clothes, you'll pay for the fucking Snuggie or whatever, but like ultimately, this is a human child that we have to like help, or even an adult that we have to help. And it like, they did that really well. I think they showcased kind of the mental deterioration of that on you, and how much like that really I still have most of what bothers me now is knowing that exists and I can't do anything about it anymore. It's not my burden to do anything about it anymore. Right.
Oh, that they got that right. That's what I love. And the one part that I did like as well was when they went into the house of the burning house to rescue everybody.
Yeah.
I know Cheesy Waffles in chat, but what got me about that was how many times we ran into burning buildings to look for someone, because FD's not there yet. Yeah. And it's just like what people don't. And then going back to this is that you talk about the badge is that what my life is. I'm supposed to do this. Yeah. And I love when they come out and they're so overwhelmed with the smoke, but they don't want anything to do with the medics or anybody. They're like, get the fuck away from me. All I want to know is my partner. And I personally experienced that during the that SWAT stand shooting I was in.
Sure.
Because I remember thinking to myself, where's my team? I just want to get back to my team. I don't want to talk to anybody that's not part of my team. And then they finally got me back to the locker room where our team was at. and I wasn't really able to finally like decompress or feel anything until I was with my team. And it was just so funny. Is like everyone's trying to, are you okay? You're okay. And I'm like, I just get me to my team. Just, leave me alone. And I remember seeing that part of the movie that caught my, my attention as well. You're right. That story was like about 10 careers. 10.
Yeah. I was like, that was a lot. I was like, that happened in such a compressed amount of time. Yeah. But I'll say this, like it's a different, like you are. I feel bad now because I'm trying to relate to the human civilian side of things, but like there's going to be forever this weird distance, and I think this is why. My wife makes fun of me. She's like, one of your best friends now is some guy you've never met halfway across the country. But like there's an odd distance I feel from people that haven't experienced that because they wouldn't understand and they won't understand you. It's kind of like, it's probably how pit bulls feel when they walk around like, why is everyone so scared of me? I'm just a happy little dog.
Right.
And there's an odd, even in those calls, and it's a hot call and whatever, I feel real shitty for supervisors. That when it's a bad call like that, and it's real, was the Six Flags call was the best example of this I could think of. Right before we left, we had a shooting at Six Flags. The fucking radio traffic was awful because we couldn't hear anything because the PA system was super loud, and all we knew was there were shots fired and a bunch of cops that we couldn't account for.
Oh,
and so we had lieutenants just saying, "Fucking go!" If we were showing up, they're like, "Get in that fucking park and get me eyes on at least." Because if they're dying or getting beat to death or getting shot or whatever, at least someone's there to help. Because fire's not going to touch this until we can secure an entire theme park. Six Flags is ginormous.
Yeah.
It's like we have to secure the whole fucking thing until we can kind of shut this stuff down. And I remember the look on the controlling sergeant's face as we ran by him because he had to stage. He wasn't allowed to go in because he's the controlling supervisor. He's dealing with assets, and you could see it on his. I've never forget this. I think it was Sergeant Garcia. Good guy. That doesn't narrow it down in my police department, but you could see it on his face. It killed him to have to stand there and watch us run in as he just kind of like had to organize what was happening because y'all go into this entrance, y'all go into that entrance. Somebody secure the fucking cars because we have rifles and shit in our cars. And the last thing we need is 40,000 people inundating our vehicles and stuff like that. He's like, try to get EMS to stage. He's looking at a map and like trying to place EMS strategically in places where they can stage. He's organizing because we had people breaking fucking legs and shit, trying to jump fences. And so we were trying to develop teams to take those people out so that they could get emergency care. And that whole time, he's just having to listen to the fucking chaos that was our radio traffic at the time. And dispatch, everybody, and that's the one time I do feel a lot of sympathy for like dispatch and watch command and stuff like that because your job is now to organize. Your go die time was 10 or 15 years ago. This is now the burden that they kind of carry, and they can do it perfect. If anything, you'd rather have the few times we're like really shorthanded, then you'd have a fucking like you had that one. I had a Lieutenant Kimbrough was a bad motherfucker. I love that guy. He'd show up and he's like, all right, fucking Josh, let's go do this. And I was like, all right, old man, like, you fucking check yourself. But he was down because he's like, I this is my time to shine, baby. Like, I finally get to go back and do. And it was I had a deputy chief one time that was, I'll never not sing the praises of this guy, but it was Chief Colby, really cool guy. He would back me. He's like, all right, fuck it, let's do this. I'll be your back because I don't know how to work a call, but I can be your back, And he's like, he got to just be a cop when we were shorthanded, and I was like, wow, that's fucking wild. This guy's got 700 or 800 sworn officers under him, and he's out here itching to get in a patrol car and go work a call.
Okay, so I'll talk to you about Okay, so I'll give you the perspective of Sergeant Garcia.
There it is.
So here, just recently, and I'll tell you, it was hard. So just recently, it's maybe 2 months ago, dispatch calls me and says that our city to the north of us has an officer down, and they need our Bearcat. So I'm like, yes. So I'm walking out to the unit lot because I know officers are in there, and I see the first officer who was SWAT, and I go, get in that Bearcat and start driving north. And he's like, okay. And I said, we have an officer down. Josh, it took everything I had to keep my feet planted because I'm still a paramedic, and I'm thinking if they got an officer down, I should go because I could drag the guy in, we can get him to the hospital, blah blah. But I realized because now they're asking for additional resources. Long story short, all but 2 officers for my entire department responded to that call because dispatch then I told dispatch 4 units plus the Bearcat. Dispatch gets on the radio, be advised, and the city's Arcadia.
Sure.
They said Arcadia is they're still in the gun, they're still taking rounds. And at that point in time, Josh, I realized I lost control in 3 seconds. All I saw was cars, and that 4 went to my entire department.
I was about to say, everyone said, "Fuck you! I'll take the ride up. We're going." Yeah.
Cars leaving, right? The parking lot. I'm surprised no one crashed in the parking lot because it's one of those things like, and people are taking off, right? So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to dispatch. I got to monitor this from dispatch because I at least can look at the MDCs and see where everyone's at. Blah blah blah.
Sure.
Our department responded so awesomely that they actually, even while the actual city was dealing with their stuff, our officers drove by other jurisdictions that were staging with the Bearcat and stuff like that and did the rescue.
Yeah.
They drove up onto the lawn. They provided cover. They grabbed the officer was able to exfil, threw him on they got him. Then they got him to the staging area where FD dealt with them. But I remember the whole entire time because these guys are all getting like accommodations, for. Okay. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I wanted to go. Mm-hmm. I felt like I should be there with them. Like, and it was hard. It's like, it's like you're sending them off to possibly be their last call.
Sure.
And you're like, I should be going. And it's the hardest thing to do is just to sit there and you're like, this sucks. So going back to your other thing about like your chief, when you get out there and you're like finally like, and I'll tell people, like I said, I'll back you to the cows come home because there's no way I can investigate it.
Is that I haven't done a domestic in 20 years.
The rights, but it's fun is because you go out there and and you just get to be a cop again. You get to pull your gun out, or you get to tell someone to shut the fuck up. And and it's cool. And here's even the best part to it is you could say, "Hey, Josh, yeah, go ahead and put in your report what I did."
I was about to say this motherfucker's the first thing. Hey, so your use of force report, just go ahead and add me to that. This is what I want you to say. I pulled my gun at this time, and I was like, "Bro, do a supplement." He's like, "I don't know what that means." I have no idea what a supplement to that report
means. I didn't even begin to know what key function that is on the MDC.
Sorry, what's an MDC? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
what is
exactly. It's like this.
I need you to come to my office.
This is all you would see.
This guy. No, I think it's a cool fraternity to have participated in, and I think a lot of people I've realized most people will never fully get to appreciate or experience what it's like to operate with people like that. But it was a cool. In the second you said it, I was like, hell yeah! I was like, there we go, boys. But it's like there is a hard like wall that exists, and people talk about whatever the thin blue line or whatever. It's not that. There's like an ethos because there's some non-police officers that are like this. There's an ethos with the people that cannot sit by. They cannot idly sit by and do nothing. They just can't. No. It's not in their character. I don't know how you recruit for that. I don't know but there's a weird like burning that they feel. These are the same people that'll stop when there's like debris in the highway. Right? My wife hates this shit. But if it's like something where I'm like, dude, this is going to like destroy somebody's windshield, I go cant my truck, get out of my car real quick, toss the thing and get back in my truck and go. Like, I can do something, so I should kind of thing. Like it's a thing. And not everyone has that. There are plenty of people perfectly willing to ostrich their head in the sand, right? And just let the world happen. And that level of apathy, a part of that's maybe generational, part of that's the internet, part of that's whatever. But like, I think the more that becomes the norm and the more you burn out the guys that are willing to go. There's this really cool quote about, it's in the Bible, about needing to get warriors. And he's like, well, who should I recruit like as a warrior, and he says, we'll take them all out to the river and let them drink. And he says that most men will get on their bellies and drink the water. He's like, but some men keep their eyes to the horizon. And they keep their spears in their hands and the eyes in the horizon while they drink. And he goes, those will be the men that you need to have in your army. And it's such a weird, like, I remember hearing the quote and thinking, damn, I get that. I was like, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's a very different, like, it's not like a sheepdog thing. It's I have been hurt by this world, and so I know what's out there. I can never fully belly down and drink, knowing that there's a crocodile that might come bite my head off. Like, it's a very weird ethos. And once you've been adopted, and I think once you have been initiated, and part of it's initiation, part of it's stress, part of it's whatever. I think once you've crossed that threshold, there is no coming back.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. It's like a prime example. Last week, my wife and I, we went to the show, and she already knows what tickets, what seats to buy. We're not going to be in the middle where someone's going to take me out from behind. That's not going to happen. And just the various different things that we do. But I love that analogy, because here's like even a prime. And I don't like tooting my own horn, but I remember I showed up to work a couple of weeks ago, and one of the officers was sitting in his car, and he said, I didn't realize what I was doing, but we got inside the station. And he's all like, "Hey, LT," and I'm like, "What's going on?" He goes, "Man," he's all, "You're still on it." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's all, "When you got out of your car, he's always watching you. You had your gun in your hand, like you were ready to, take someone out." Because I take my gun out of the holster and it's in my hand. I'm like, "You are not taking me out to the back door. I'm not dying in the unit lot, okay? Yeah. You can take me out at work, but I'm not dying in the unit lot."
Not at the unit lot. No.
Or where we park our personal vehicles. So, and he's like, and he goes, "Your head was on a swivel." He's like, "You're looking around. You look behind you every now and then." I'm like, "Oh," I said, that's just what I do, man." And it's just one of those things where, like you said, once you've been there, you can't stop. You just can't.
Yeah. And I think I've gotten better at hiding it, because it wasn't natural for me. I was a belly. I was laying the belly, drink from the river kind of thing. Sure. And I was very lucky to have, and there was cops like you, really, truly, that kind of waded me through the swamp until I could swim. And then eventually, I learned how to thrive in that environment. But like, when they wonder, and it kind of goes back to the very first thing you said, it's like, well, should they be doing stress inoculation training, or should they be doing, should they be treating people like shit? And should they be? Yes.
Yeah.
You don't want a cop that's going to stand there not knowing what to do with their fucking dick in their hand while there's innocent people dying. You don't want. You want the guy that's willing to go in there. He's, fuck it. If I die, I die. But at least I'm taking this guy with me, and I can't. Yeah, I cannot sit there and listen to kids have agonal breathing. I can't even let crackheads sit there and die. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a weird. I am willing to go walk up to the patient zero zombie in the middle of the field and at least go check on the motherfucker, right?
Exactly.
So like it's a different. I don't know. It's a very different breed of people. I respect everyone that's willing to do it, and that's not all cops. I hate saying that, but there's a lot of times where I'll see stuff and I'm like, bro, it's not for you. This was not for you. I love you. I'm glad that you tried. I appreciate your effort. But like, for those of us that have gotten hurt, that have been hospitalized, or now have fucking traumatic brain injuries and shit, I'm sure, or whatever, like, we're allowed to gatekeep that, because we've done the thing. We've done the job, and you can look it up. It's all public record. We didn't fuck up that bad. So, yeah.
So I got a question from Colorado. That's his name. Chris, departments have internal politics, and how have you navigated them and stayed on the force so long? Well, that's a good one, because so I will say this.
Luck. No, I'm kidding.
I have not always navigated department politics good, because I have I'll be honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I can totally admit this. I have been part of department politics where I have chosen a side. And
you have to.
I've chosen a side, sometimes not for the most admirable reason. Sometimes it was for personal gain. And later on down the line, you realize, wow, you know what? That was wrong. And there's many decisions that I have made in my career where I'm not proud of. And in fact, there are decisions regarding my own promotional process where I wish I would never have decided to promote during a certain time period, because I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I wasn't doing it because, I thought it was where I should be. I was doing it because I didn't want some guy below me to tell me what the hell, I should be doing. And that's the wrong reasons why you should promote. So now learning all of these life lessons towards the end of my career, I try to share them with people, other officers, to say, these are the reasons why we should be doing this stuff. You shouldn't be beholden to any person. You should be beholden to your oath and your community that you serve. But in current politics, I've been trying to stay clear of them, even though I cannot. But the only thing that I can do is do things that I can look at myself in the mirror in the morning. And so I go out of my way to take care of the cops. And I go out of my way to even take care of what I call the professional staff, the civilians. And I'll give you a prime example of that. Yesterday, well, my sergeant and I, we host a barbecue once a month, and we pay close to $400 each to buy all the meat, all the sides. The officers and the staff don't have to bring anything. And this is just for our shift, day shifts there, but we mostly do it for our shift, and we bring everybody together. There's all of this food and stuff like that, and we do it because we want to break bread with everybody, and we want people to be able to eat, and they go on their calls and they come back and just kind of hang out and build that camaraderie. I think that's how you navigate that. You show people who you really are, and you sit there and you listen to them. And you try to stay out of the politics, even though every now and then someone tries to drag you in, but you just got to be you. And you got to be genuine. And people know. There are people who know who I am. And people have tried to take me out. I went on hiatus for almost 3 months because my former chief tried to take me out. Because, I wasn't part of his political thing, and I challenged him. And I don't say I almost came close to losing my job, but it was getting kind of dicey for me there for a little bit, that I didn't know if I was going to survive, if my lieutenant bars were going to survive these investigations. So it's tough, but in the end, you got to do the right thing for the right reasons, and it can't be for personal self-gain. And have I made decisions for personal self-gain? Yes, I have, and I'm not proud of it. So learning my lessons from that, today, I go out of my way to make sure I'm making the best decisions for everybody. And so it is what it is. So that's, that's my take on that. But yeah, it's tough. And as Josh has said right now, there's politics everywhere. There's department politics everywhere. And you do have to choose a side. You can't stay apolitical on these things. It's just almost impossible. It's almost impossible.
So, and just to kind of sum up what he's saying, it's a government job. Government is politics. There's no getting around that. Whether you're in city management, whether you're in local, I don't care if you're part of the Rotary Club. The idea behind the term politics is that there are factions that have different objectives to accomplish, right? And in police departments, I hope it's always that. If not, you have tyranny, truly, and that's not what you want. And so you have the people that say, well, we need to change training, right? Well, okay. Do we need to add more like weapons training and more like scenario-based training, or do we need to take the gloves off and make this more like a college environment, right? There's merits to both of those discussions, and ultimately the best answer is probably a little bit of both. But you have to advocate for what you see as a deficiency. And if I'm an officer working in a shitty part of town, I'll be like, hell no, you're bringing me a bunch of soft little butterflies, I need cops. Whereas when you're working in like Beverly Hills, right, where there's nothing happening, and you need the articulate police officer that can sit there and discuss and navigate the complexities of interpersonal relationships that pretty much everyone wants to have with you in those communities. It's not that they're pro-police, they're pro-order, and they're pro-protecting their investments. They're going to be like, what the fuck? This guy's dumber than a bag of hammer. I don't need some knuckle-dragging idiot to be policing this area. The same cop will not do well. Like, I truly would not do well probably in, like, Detroit, to be honest. I don't know the culture there. I don't know where the bad streets are there. Can I do the job safely? Sure, but I'm not the best cop for there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know that. I could accomplish the job safely for the most part, depending on who I'm dealing with, right? But like it's not. I know that about myself. I was very well suited to where I was at, but I could very easily go out to the country in BFE and hate everyone I work with, right, and be a bad cop or a bad fit as a police officer there. So I think I think politics gets a bad word because of politicians. You have people that their whole point is they want to play that game, and it's a strive for power, it's a strive for whatever. I think oftentimes the disservice that's done for us is that some of these people stop becoming advocates. You'll have police chiefs and stuff like that, or lieutenants that stop becoming advocates for the main objective, and it becomes self-serving and things of that nature. So I even as a P1, you're playing into politics. They gave a vote of no confidence to the police chief right after I left at my police department. Really think of that. That's politics. That's what it is.
That is politics. So yeah. So I'll throw this question out to Josh as well, and here's my answer to it. There's a question: what is a typical shift for a police officer like? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, there is no typical shift.
Yeah.
No. You can start your shift typically normal, and then they go to shit for you, and you can end up on one investigation your entire shift. A child abuse investigation that's going to take up your whole entire 12 and a half hours, or you can start a shift and guess what? There's no radio calls. Nothing's going on, and it's just a nice, quiet day. Those are rare these days, but they do happen from time to time. So there's no real. It's kind of like saying the typical traffic stop. There is no typical traffic stop. Every traffic stop is dangerous, and if you're a cop and you don't realize that, you got to get out of the business because this could be the one. But what do you think about that, Josh?
I think that's the danger. I think it's where you start to treat. You have to apply justice evenly, right? But safety is going to be very different from one place to another. And so like you recognizing that this is not just a normal domestic, like, because you run into a domestic call where the kid's not listening to the parent, right? And the kid smacks the parent in the face, right? This is domestic assault in Texas. The kids are not allowed to hit their parents. But if you just say, well, okay, I have bodily injury, the kid hit the parent, I guess the kid's going to juvie, right? Or at least I'm taking a report in or whatever. If I just keep treating it like that and I don't keep my head on a swivel and keep my eyes on the horizon, right? I start looking at like, that's weird that the kid's door locks from the outside. That's kind of strange. The kid lives in the garage that's unair conditioned.
Right.
That's a clue something weird's happening. You know what I mean? Like there's things like that where like you just don't. I have the offensive cam done because this is an average police call, right? Always be looking, and it's not because you're like paranoid or trying to get people in trouble. You're looking for the little things because really, truly, like the subtlety, how subtly different somebody in an abusive relationship or someone being human trafficked is. There's not that big of a difference on what it looks like from the outside, to be honest. Like, wow, this person's really quiet and very passive and is constantly looking over at their significant other for like approval to do stuff. Could this be a toxic relationship? Sure. Probably that. Should I go over there and poke around as a police officer? Just to make sure everybody's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And that seems like a randomly innocuous police interaction. You could be saving someone's life. That's how weird. And a lot of people, and there's a bunch of nothing. It's a bunch of nothing. It's a fucking car accident, or it's a fucking noise complaint, or whatever. And there's all of these calls that end up being a bunch of nothing. But every once in a while, you'll walk across it where you have an opportunity to make a real difference and go do cool hero cop shit. But it's not always like obvious to you. It's not always like, again, the shooting in progress. It's not. Sometimes it's something as simple as, someone ordering pizza on the 911 dispatch thing and picking up like, oh shit, like this person knows. Yeah,
those are cool stories, man.
But they happen a lot. I remember there was a noise complaint for a kid that was trying to kill himself, and he kept dropping stuff. Because he was trying to hang himself and he kept like not doing it correctly, and so he just kept hitting the ground. And so the downstairs neighbor finally called in a noise complaint, and I'm super annoyed, like fucking noise complaint, right? So I go over there and I listen, and I'm about to just deuce out because I hated these calls, right? And sure enough, I hear a thud. I was like, well, that's kind of fucking weird. So we knock on the door, and the guy comes up and answers, and he's like teary-eyed or whatever. And I was like, well, what's going on? Like, you moving furniture or what? And he's like, no, I just keep dropping stuff. And I was like, well, your neighbor doesn't appreciate you dropping stuff. And you could tell, like, I'm gaslighting this poor kid. And the kid's like, well, I just can't do anything right. And I was like, where have I heard that before? And I'm like, what do you mean you can't do anything right? Like, you're trying to move, you need help moving some furniture? Like, I'm not trying to help with this, but I'm just trying to like dig a little deeper.
Right.
I start looking in his apartment, and I'm like, he ain't got shit in here. This is kind of weird. He had sold all his stuff because he had lost his job, and it's that story where he's going to go off. He's here to off himself finally. And finally, we managed to get an outcry statement on the guy. And he's like, hey, yeah, like, I'm super upset. I was just trying to kill myself, and I couldn't even do that right. And we got a chuckle out of that. You know? And so I talked to him, and I didn't want to, because I told him, I was like, look, bro, like, you did an outcry statement to me. Like, I'm not trying to take you to the hospital and take the, like, grippy socks. You've been cool with me. Is there somebody I could take you to? Because his car was taken or whatever. And so I got on the phone and managed to get somebody to get, like, he had a safety group with him. So his family came and picked him up for the whole nine. But I was like, I could have left, and maybe eventually he'd have sorted it out, right? And like, I don't know. There's small stuff like that where I realized, like, there's opportunities for you to do good things every day. If you choose not to, or you choose to treat everything like an ordinary police call, that whole phrase in and of itself is kind of, it comes from people that don't do the job. It's the best way to do it. It's everyone has normal days. Police officers are not allowed to have normal days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. One of my mentors, and you know him, is Dr. Thompson, the creator of Verbal Judo.
Yeah.
One of his tenets was leave people better than how you found them.
Yep.
And I believe that. Okay. So I have a good question for you, Josh, because I once again. So my answer is yes, and here's the answer why I say yes. It says, do limits on civil asset forfeiture endanger us? So let me throw this out there. I think asset forfeiture is good, but here's where I think asset forfeiture can endanger, especially law enforcement. Is sometimes chiefs of police love seeing that money come in,
sure,
and they'll start chasing the money. And I don't think a law enforcement agency should ever chase the money. You know, if an investigation happens and we're able to get this money through asset forfeiture, that's fine. But it's when we make it our priority and we start going after it above everything else that might things be going on in our city. So I think there has to be rules. I think there should be, there has to be, once again, I just see bad things when we start chasing the money.
And I'll say this, like, I think the ability to cripple criminal enterprises is important. And so I can kind of see the value in it there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I worked at a department. I specifically went to a department because they did not engage in civil asset forfeiture. If we see something, it just went into evidence or they destroy it. They never kept anything. And mind you, we destroyed hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of shit. Or they would get sold into auction and it would go, it was a city, like the police department was not allowed to access the funds that we would do anything to. Because sometimes you'd have like a damn Maserati that was involved in like a kidnapping case or something. And you're like, how are we going to do this Maserati, right?
Yeah.
And so the city would figure it out and they would like pay it out in a suit or something like that. I think if you are doing your job well, you'll be interrupting crime, right? And I think that it can be dangerous, kind of like what Chris said, that I have seen in the places where it's abused, that it's abused awful. Like, it is one of the worst, I think, most disgusting things police departments can do is anytime abuse the power that's given to you. And so that being said, if I'm going to be the guy that believes that qualified immunity should exist for police officers, because it should, because a good cop should have some level of qualified immunity because it's the only way they can do their job, right? I understand the mechanism for it. I just think there should be rules, pretty hard and fast rules. And I'm okay with those rules coming down federally and saying across the board, these are the qualifications you need to have civil asset forfeiture. I personally think you can do the job without it, but I came from a pretty healthy tax base. So like, it's easy for me to say because my police department's budget was like $400 million a year, something crazy like that. Like, it was a big department. It's a big budget. So like, but I guarantee you, if you're a 6-man department, right, and you just randomly like in a port city that has crime all the time, like, well, fuck it. I mean, it's. I get it. If you can lower the tax base, the burden on taxpayers to pay for your police department, I'm here for it. But I think that there should be some way of making sure that it's not getting abused.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another good question. Should qualified immunity for police be adjusted?
I I think this kind of goes back to how people don't understand what qualified immunity is.
Yeah.
And it's qualified immunity isn't a blanket immunity to anything that you do. When you're on duty, it really only applies when you're doing your job within the confines of the law or within like that means that there's a law enforcement objective, there's crime afoot. Typically is the verbiage that at least that we used here in Texas is that there's probable cause for us to believe a reasonable person could see what this officer saw and see that there's crime that needs to be prevented, and then he utilized justifiable force to enforce that law. Any other circumstance outside of that, you do not have qualified immunity.
Yeah.
So like I think the question comes. So I don't know how you'd adjust that. Is my question is like, do you want them to have like less instances where it applies? Like, is it only under a felony? That's what you have in a lot of places, like in California, where like their theft under 1,000 isn't a felony. So if it's not if it's not over 1,000, law enforcement doesn't have qualified immunity. So why would they stop the crime? Because let's say I go, and the criminals know this, is like if the cop comes and I run, he can't chase me because that's an unauthorized use of force. This is now unlawful restraint. This is now an abuse of police power. And so if I'm a store owner or just a person, right, I know that I can steal packages off your porch because it's not a felony. Yep. I'll just follow the fucking Amazon guy and pick up every patch because there's not a single thing law enforcement can do. Right?
That's exactly
why register my car? Why have insurance on my car? Why have so like if your question is for the people that want to adjust it, where do you want that line to stop? Because if it's I only have qualified immunity in a violent felony, right? Well, now like where does that line draw? And then if the DA's office decides that they don't want to, they want to change the law and say that sexual assault's not a violent felony. Can we not do anything about that? So I think most of the time when you look at qualified immunity, I would point that finger more at judges. I would also point that finger more at city planners. I think you should be able to hold city planners accountable for misappropriating funds. You really should see more politicians in prison more often, Martha Stewart style, where they're abusing the office that they're given and then getting a free pass. You have FBI investigations that go down. Heck, John Wiley Price here in Dallas stole millions of dollars, didn't spend a single day in jail. I think Dan Crenshaw recently in Houston, he went and paid through funds like a thing that employs his wife, and I was like, bro, like. What are we doing here? Like, this is clear, obvious, like misappropriation of funds. There should be punishments for that, but they're immune because they are who they are. So, I don't know how you'd adjust it if you wanted to adjust it, but it doesn't make any sense to do it because then why have police officers like that? And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Because Chris and myself and whatever, we're going to be fine, and we're going to go make a little commune, and we're going to go live over there.
We'll be okay.
Yeah, that thin blue line gets a lot better looking if that's the way you're gonna do things.
So let's let everybody know that we're in chat. We're gonna go about another 15 minutes and call it. Now we do have a question, and I'll answer, and then I'll have Josh definitely answer it. It says crime prevention should apply to MAGA extremists. No, crime prevention should apply to everybody. Yeah. Plain and simple. And here's the thing: is that and I'll speak to this. We watched the United States from town to town burn down, and nothing was being done to those extremists.
Sure.
And they were saying that they were just protesting. Well, I have, like I said, Josh, and I know Josh believes this as well. I've got no problem with protesting. That's the
beautiful part of America. Yeah.
The genius of our country. But when you start to deprive people of their property, that's BS. And for cops to be hampered, to not be able to do stuff and all that type of stuff. But no, crime prevention should apply to everybody. If you start making groups, one day you may find yourself that these groups are okay and these groups are not okay, and you never want that to happen. You never want law enforcement to choose groups. You want law enforcement to equally apply the law to everybody. And that's the other genius about the law enforcement system in the United States. While it is flawed, it is the best system that we have in the world. If you look at law enforcement in other countries, they don't even hold a candle to what we do here. Don't even hold a candle. So,
every time we have this conversation about applying laws and stuff like that, I believe in freedom first, right? I truly believe that people should have the freedom to do what they want to do. And part of that's allowing them to be dangerous, right? And I said, as I was a cop in Texas, right? 9 times out of 10, I was underarmed for the people that I was interacting with, right? Because GOs only allowed me to carry X amount of munitions on my person, right? And I dealt with people that had better body armor than me, better rifles than me, better handguns than me, and had more friends than I did, right? So like I being a servant and being really conscientious of what that relationship was like, they didn't care. They weren't looking for, I was very lucky for this. They weren't looking to harm me most times. They were just like, hey, I want you to deal with the shit I don't want to deal with. Or I want you to take care of the things that we've invested in, whether it's my house or my apartment or my store or the dinner I'm on right now. Go protect that environment that we're spending money to try to have, right? And that was my function as a police officer, 9 times out of 10. I think when you start parceling out treating a certain group different than others, right? Or even labeling a certain group different than others, you start trying to treat them differently. And you can look at Jim Crow laws. You can look at, there's instances in America where this happened. And I think we can all collectively look back and be like, well, that's fucked up, right? And so if it doesn't apply in one instance, it shouldn't apply in another. When it comes to taking a government agent and saying that they can go and do X, Y, Z. The government shouldn't be treating any one demographic any differently than the other. It's as much as that might sound simple or might sound complicated, it really isn't. There's not too many law-abiding people robbing banks. Like, you know what I mean? There's not too many law-abiding people speeding at 160 miles per hour on the freeway, right? And I think depending on who's in power, and it's scary every single time, every 4 years, this changes. And the first thing some people want to do is throw the cops at them. And you bring up what was happening in 2020 was just a shitty year to be a cop. But I vividly remember sitting there and watching as shit burned, right? And we would just wait. We were just sitting, waiting for our turn because it was going to be our turn and they were going to start throwing bricks and whatever. And like that, practically the same thing happens at the Capitol, and now it's not politically in favor to go do it.
No, yeah.
And so it was a weird, and because it's a political agenda. It's no longer about freedom or law enforcement or whatever, and they turned it into a political tool, and in a bad way, because it's about positioning, it's about power, it's about whatever. There's an agenda behind it, and that sort of cuts both ways. Most protesters were perfectly reasonable people. It really was the case. Most of the protesters that I interacted with were really cool. They stayed on the sidewalk, and I'd show up. Hey, bro, you stay here, and I would gladly defend you from anyone trying to prevent your protest. I would tell them that. I was like, somebody interrupts you while you're doing this, you tell me, and I'll go rip them right out of there, because I owe you protection in the same way that I owe the city, right? But I told them that the second you interrupt commerce is more important than your protest, okay? XYZ is more important than your protest, and I would just as judiciously do that. I'm here to keep peace. That's my job. As long as you're not trampling on anyone else's rights, we're good. And I think the political language that's now emerging, and it goes back to what we were talking about we're probably too far gone. And I do believe that to a certain extent, is the language is so escalated at this point that no matter what happens in 2024, it can do nothing almost but escalate. And it's what people want for some odd reason. I don't know why. But like either police officers have to become tyrants or apathetic. And you kind of keep asking them to do the same thing and not realizing that as long as it doesn't hurt you, it's not a big deal. But it's not my store that's burning down.
Right.
It's this other company that's got insurance. I was like, well, what if it was your house? I'll go back to the lady that police officers got in a shooting with a guy killing him. This guy was cranking off rounds at his girlfriend and his girlfriend's kids. And so they're protesting that police officer shot a guy, right? And she shows up like, this man tried to kill me and my kids. How dare you try to say George Floyd's name in the same as, at least he died over and over, like he died sitting there. He wasn't doing anything violent when he died. I can kind of understand you being upset about that. He's like, this was not that guy. This wasn't some innocent. He was trying to, what if he would have killed my kid? Well, and everyone's there trying to gaslight her situation, and they're sitting there saying, "Well, we're just trying to protest for justice." It's like, no, I'm glad they shot him. I'm glad they killed him, because if he would have had it his way, I'd be dead. My kids would be dead.
Yeah,
God knows how many other people could have gotten shot in that apartment complex while he's willy-nilly cranking off rounds down the hallway.
That's two different. Yeah, and you make a great point, because they bring in one. They bring in an incident and apply it to everybody, and they don't realize that some people just need to be killed because they're trying to kill someone.
That's sad reality. Yeah,
it is.
And if you don't believe that, why were you guys bitching about Uvalde?
Oh, right.
If you don't truly intrinsically believe that, why everyone should have applauded the amount of restraint that Uvalde PD did in that call.
Right.
If that's your take, because it's just not. If you're gonna no. So it's a brutal 2 cents on it, but that's the reality. That's the reality that we've lived. And I think kind of what we talked about it is like once you've kind of crossed that threshold, you know how the real world works. It's a hard thing to unsee or to unfeel, but I'm with you, Chris.
But no. What's funny, Josh, is you bring. I was actually going to ask you about Uvalde, and I went because here's what I wanted to, because I definitely wanted to get your. I know what you're going to say, but anyways, so in one of the videos that I did for Gameology, I was bringing up the actor shooter incident. I'm talking about it, and I talk about that. After Columbine, we learned about the active shooter, and we all got training across the country about active shooters and blah 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 blah. And we all know now that if it's an active shooter in a school, and this is pre-Uvalde, that we rifle up, we do what we can, and we get into the school, and at very minimum, we're giving the bad guy someone else to focus on, and not the children. Okay, Uvalde. And then so I started reading the comments, and then post Uvalde, and I went back and started reading some of the comments, and people are just blasting me. Oh, your comments about you guys knowing what you're doing are bullshit. See, look at Uvalde. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I get it. You, me, Bill, and basically the law enforcement community, we have acknowledged that was a breakdown. Whatever happened, but that was a breakdown from people in charge. I go back to this. People in charge that should have probably not been in charge. Yep. This is where I'm a big advocate about master your profession. Because if you're at the top and you bullshitted your way all the way to the top, and then a critical incident comes and now you're the incident commander, you're going to fail. You can't bullshit yourself through an incident command or through a critical incident like that. And then we see it. Did you just hear too, Josh? I just heard on the radio yesterday that they're now looking at another person that was trying to he was trying to get the teams to stand down, and they disobeyed his direct order, and that's when the team that went in and did what they got to do.
Oh, they're if they could have burned the radio traffic for that, they would have, because that's how bad it was. So, and I'll say this, and I wish people kept that energy when they looked at suspects that do stuff, right? I'd be real impressed if you could go more than about 5 hours without an aggravated assault happen.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Whether it's a foot or a car or whatever, right? And so if they could keep that energy of holding people accountable and wanting harder things for everybody else, I'm team that. Here we go. But you're starting to see the side effects, and you're going to continue to see it. Uvalde is a side effect and a symptom of that administrative overreach. And I'm not saying administrator just from the police chief level. They wanted softer academies. They want de-escalation training. They value XYZ. They don't want, they want the touchy-feely cops. That's what they want. And is there a place for that? Absolutely. I truly believe that there is space in that profession for you to have somebody that's got a really soft touch and understands how to reach to people and de-escalate and talk. Crisis intervention is a huge part of that, where we have, a CIT team and they have a negotiator, and that's their job. Their job is to reach across that phone and try to convince that person to solve this thing amicably. And if not, I want Knuckle Dragon Gorilla back there, right? That's the guy I want, because I need this to be solved in the most peaceable way it can, but also that it affects the least amount of people possible. Even training went way further back from when I went through academy. I vividly remember sitting there in academy And I'll never. His Corporal Cook was sitting there, and he was the one giving us active shooter training. And he said, "We've spent weeks, if not months, teaching you guys how to do room clearing, teaching you guys how to do, weapons handling and all this kind of stuff, how to stage." He goes, "If the call text is," and he brought it up, he's like, "if it's this, this, or this, forget all that shit." He's like, "Forget everything I just taught you." I was like, "It does not matter. What matters is you stopping it." He says, "If you die," he goes, "if you die on that call, I'll be the first motherfucker to go to every single year when we celebrate your death. I'll be the first one there to say, you know what? I couldn't have been more proud of that cop."
Right.
Literally what he said. He goes, "It's not about safety anymore for you." And as he gave us this whole, it was a really cool, I love the way that he broke it down, but he's like, it's about stopping it. And he goes, and if it happens to be a CHL guy that happens to be there, fuck him. That's his, in the same way that you're going and running at it, potentially running right into your death to gunfire. That's what this guy signed. Because I asked the question, because I'm the gun-toting idiot prior to becoming a cop. I was like, hey, what if it's a CHL guy? He's like, he better be real quick on the dropping it and putting his hands up. He better be just as quick as he was to pull that out. He better be real quick to kind of put his hands up. And I thought about it, and I was like, I guess you're right. The burden's the same. The burden on the good guy with the gun is the same burden that I have, in that, hey, I'm running the risk of dying going here, and I've made the decision that it's worth it to stop violence, right? And yeah, I mean, even like the active shooter training we did with Fire, like Fire was getting ballistic vests. They wanted it. They were like, hell yeah. And he's like, if this saves me long enough to save someone else, that's enough. Yep. They don't even get guns, these psychos. FD's running up there with nothing but a fucking helmet and like a red vest too. They couldn't even give him like a black vest. I was like, can you give them something a little less like obvious?
Let's have them just wear their yellow turnouts.
Yeah. Well, and what was sad too is they said, well, maybe the shooter will see him and know that they're help. And I was like, are you trying to act like this is a rational person? Like, okay. Yeah, I'll do whatever you want. So it's just different. And even like when you talk about like a dynamic entry into a room, this kind of more advanced step, we talked about plating up, and I won't get into it because it's a I don't want to call it a trade secret, but it's a tactic. And if we're having to quickly go through and clear a room, literally, where normally I would pie a corner, I literally just stick my body in the door frame so that the rest of my team can run by me. And if someone shoots at us, at least I'm the only one getting shot. I will eat the bullets for the rest of my team so they can turn around and address that threat.
Yep.
But at least I was the only one that got shot. That's a weird, and you literally train that way. We're running and you're like, all right, is a quick dynamic entry to go clear this thing? And you're like, the second your room comes up, you're like, I swear to God, if this actor's in here, I'm fucked. Because I'm going to turn that corner like an idiot and stand right in the fatal funnel so that I can make sure everyone's fine. And sure enough, one of you pulls that short straw, and, and you're giving that guy medical, and now everyone's addressing the room because we found the threat, right? But that's what we signed up to do. That's what we trained. Literally, we did that specific training for that specific exercise, and it clearly failed to materialize there, or it was told not to be done.
Yeah, I go with more. It was told not to be done. That's
guns for firefighters.
I saw that.
This one. Yeah, and truly, if I'm going to ask a firefighter to be in a dangerous position, why do his rights diminish to protect himself? Now, that being said, obviously, if you're doing it for the state, there has to be a level or threshold of training and stuff like that. I am not going to be team make it mandatory for civilians to get it because it's a constitutional right for them. But when we are, as the state, being asked to go step up on their behalf, the training ceiling or the training floor is way too low for most of that stuff. There should not be a ceiling to the amount of training you can give these guys. It's whatever your taxpayers can afford.
We'll have whatchamacallit, a cheesy waffle taking a fire extinguisher.
Yeah. Suppressive fire.
You give us a CO2 so we come through the smoke.
Hell yeah.
Oh my gosh, producer Juan, look what he just wrote. Oh my gosh. Funny. All right, well, I think we're done, Josh.
Cool. Here. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I gotta actually get my butt ready for work. Thank you for joining, Josh. I'll go ahead and give my outro, and I'll let you give your outro because you are the guest here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hey, thank you for joining us on this episode with Coffee with Cops. Producer Juan's obviously in the chat, but Josh from Only Cops And you guys know we will always be joined at the hip with Only Cops. You know, it's a great relationship. I'm really glad that Fox Commander found them, and it has been nothing but fun, especially with Tactical Tuesdays and now Coffee with Cops, because it used to just be Coffee with Cop, and Coffee with Cops is actually, I believe, more successful because not only do you get my perspective on stuff, but you also get another Leo's perspective, and especially from the Midwest. That's the cool part. And you get to see how we do different things. And the nice part about it, as many of you know, that Josh and Bill are retired police officers. And so they get to say what I would love to say. And they get to be honest and with no repercussions coming from their city administrators and all that type of stuff. And so if you're in this chat or you're watching this video later on down the line, I would ask you head on over to their channel and give them a subscribe, because they do put on a great show. They do some great body cam breakdowns, but those may get adjusted.
Yeah, those are probably gonna get a little adjusted.
They do a lot of cool stuff. As far as they give you the good and bad of law enforcement. They don't always side with cops when they do the body cam breakdown, though. Like, that guy was an idiot, that type of stuff. So you get to hear their perspective on that type of stuff. And they do a lot of stuff during the week in between Tactical Tuesdays, Coffee with the Cops, and all that type of stuff. So they definitely deserve a subscribe. Plus, two, they're relevant. I want to throw that out there. They're relevant. And when I mean by that is that they're not the guys that worked 15 years ago that you see are still on the internet. And I got nothing against those guys. Great for them. They're successful. But a lot of things have changed in the last just 5 years regarding law enforcement. And they give you that perspective of what the training academies are training our current recruits, kind of the new laws that are affecting law enforcement, like Josh just brought it up right now, about the whole de-escalation and how it relates to Uvalde and all this type of stuff. And there are consequences to our politicians getting involved with law enforcement tactics and so forth. And that's what he was exactly talking about. So a lot of the stuff that they say is very relevant because their training and their experience is fresh. So that's what also makes their channel so successful. So I'm going to give it to Josh for his outro. I am done. Take care of yourself. Take care of one another. We can make the world a better place by just helping one person at a time, and that could be with a simple smile or a nice comment. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Chris the Cop reminding you, peace. Josh, it's all yours.
Asking for a nice comment on a police. Thank you guys for having me on the show. Thank you, Chris, as always, for supporting the channel and saying nice, wonderful things about us. You are one of the very few people on the internet that do. I want to thank this platform, and I think the cool thing about Coffee with the Cops is that we're really seeking the truth behind it all. There is the myth, there is the internet article, and then there's like, hey, those of us that actually did the thing, this is the reality of it. And so I think that's probably where these conversations should happen more often. And if we're going to avoid the unavoidable that I think that, or the inevitable that Chris and I were talking about earlier, this is really the only way forward, is to have discussions and to be open. I shit talk cops probably 60% of the time when I do body cam breakdowns because I see it being done poorly. And it's one thing to make a mistake. It's nothing to use poor judgment. And it's another thing to use poor judgment and then someone suffers on that behalf. We're all people, and ultimately we're servants. Chef can tell you your food sucks. I can tell you your policing sucks, okay? Like I said, I appreciate everybody having it on there. Go check us out. At Only Cops, we should be off our ban on Tuesday, hopefully. So maybe we make Tactical Tuesday if it happens the way it's supposed to. And then if not, we will see you guys on Thursday. We do a live stream every Thursday where we do body cam breakdowns. We'll probably make some adjustments to that. But at the very minimum, you should be able to catch it live. We might have to take it down after that. But you guys can do that. I appreciate it. And until next time, thank you for riding two-man with us today. Peace.
Yep. Peace. Thanks, everyone. That's all you, Fox.
So
yeah, we don't know how to turn it off.
We'll be doing Discord Q&A for the next Coffee with a Cop stream. So make sure to join the Discord and ask your questions. And what about Tuesday, Chris? Are we
offline?
No, I think we're still online.
Oh, we'll talk about Tuesday later. Let's
we'll
stop trying to pin us into stuff right now.
Anyways,